Good morning.
Good morning.
It's a joy to welcome everyone to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Harford County, situated on the native lands of the Susquehannock people. I'm Reverend Jaye Brooks. My pronouns are she and her. Leading this service with me today is Rob Lieb and Worship Associate Paul Seidler. Come on, gents, please stand up. And of course, at the piano, the amazing Brenna Kupferman. Yay, Brenna.
Good morning. We gather each Sunday morning on site and online to share in life's meaning, to grow in care and community, and open our hearts and minds to the sacred truth known by many names.
We gather in community to restore the balance of our spirits, to celebrate the joys of life and find the strength to meet our sorrows, and in the earliest meaning of the word worship, to consider ideas that are worthy of our time and attention.
Unitarian Universalism is a religious tradition that values diversity and embraces wisdom of all faiths. We use science, reason, and gifts of the Spirit to explore life's mystery and meaning. In this tradition, we know that people do not have to think alike in order to love alike.
Whatever your heritage, however your history, whomever you love, you are welcome here.
After the service today, beginning about noon, you will have the opportunity to join in a faithful conversations circle to consider our vision for the fellowship's program for children and youth. We're nearing the end of the time for these conversations. We're coming up on the last week. Check NewsBytes email to find the link to sign up for Zoom and on-site circles for next week, including a Zoom circle before next Sunday's service. There are about 10 seats available for today's circles, led by Mary Slade and Valerie Green, and there will be pizza.
Today is Commitment Sunday, when members and friends submit their pledges of financial commitment to support the mission and programs of this fellowship for the coming year. Our treasurer, Shauna Brinkerhoff, has the basket that we're using to collect your pledges. And of course, you can always make them online. Shauna, please bring the basket forward. And in her folder, she has pledges that came in early. So, thank you. Just stay right there. So, blessings upon this basket, the pledges it receives, and the families and individuals making financial commitments. May this community and the people of this community continue to thrive in the coming year. May all of us work together in harmony in support of the mission and vision of this fellowship.
I mean, it starts at 10:30, but I don't know when they're going to get to this talking part.
Okay. That was one of our Zoom participants, I believe. So the basket will be in the back of the sanctuary, ready to receive pledges. And I think there are extra pledge forms that'll be there with the basket and also out in the lobby. And of course, you can make your commitment online.
Everyone who is on site this morning, please stay after the service for coffee, refreshments, and informal conversation. If you're a newcomer, you're especially encouraged to stay. For everyone participating online, the Zoom will continue so that you can socialize with the others who are online, although you'll have to make your own coffee.
During the month of March, our worship and learning theme is transformation. One of the basic lessons of science is about the transformation of matter into energy. Rob Lieb, in his career as a physicist, has explored some of the mysteries of our universe, mysteries that have long fascinated me, despite my inability to grasp higher mathematics. Both of us agree that curiosity about the beginnings of the universe, life as we know it, and the incredible workings of the human mind are worthy topics for our consideration. And we find not only the answers, but even the questions inspirational, along with the human quest for understanding. But Rob and I have discovered that some of the answers are a bit daunting. So in addition to the sound of the bell, to guide us into this particular worship service, we offer the message and music of Peter Mayer's song, "Do You Really Want to Know?"
The sun once went around the earth, according to the Holy Church, which helped to reassure the people that they were the center of the universe. One day His Holiness the Pope met a man with a telescope. Said, "Mr. Galilei, what does your spyglass say?" And the scientist spoke. He said, "It's really quite amazing, entirely life-changing. So let me ask before I show you, do you really want to know? Oh, do you really want to know?" Emma read the Bible for direction. She said she was a child of heaven, and that the human race came from a higher place, from the angels descended. She wound up marrying her cousin. He was a thinker of a husband. Lost and thought she'd find him. Say, "Charlie, what you writing?" Darwin looked up and said, "It's really quite amazing, entirely life-changing. So let me ask before I show you, do you really want to know? Oh, do you really want to know? Do you really want to let knowledge in like a breeze through the door of your belief, blow through the rooms and the corridors, knock cherished heirlooms to the floor? That wind can raise the roof sometimes and leave you blinking at the sky. So if you stare into this glass, beware that there's no going back. You'll say sunrise, but it will refuse. Instead, the earth itself will move and spin you round from dawn to dawn, amid the wonder of it all. Do you really want to know? Oh, do you really want to know? Oh, do you really want to know? Oh, do you really want to know?
Thank you, Brenner. Each Sunday, we light the chalice of our religious heritage. We do this for our ancestors who taught us through their various religious traditions and by their actions for justice and hope. We do this for our children who are learning the traditions we teach and who learn more from our actions than our words. We do this for ourselves so that we are inspired to remember our beginnings, to reflect on who we are now, and spread our wings as we understand who we seek to become.
Our call to worship this morning is from an unusual source, quantum physicist Carlo Rovelli. The world is infinitely more complicated than the naive images we create to find our way through it. The same is true of our thought. The very distinction between the world and our thought is an enigma. Our emotional, social, and psychological complexity far exceed our grasp. We must choose between hiding away in empty truths or accepting the radical uncertainty of our knowledge, remaining like the earth, suspended in a void. The choice means trusting in a way of knowing that is keen, effective, but without infallible basis. Only in this way can we continue to understand, recognize our errors and naivete, broaden our knowledge, and give life the freedom to flourish and grow. The path of uncertainty teaches us more about the world. It is more worthy, more honest, more serious, and more beautiful. According to a Sioux elder, it is said that the meaning of life is to address everything we encounter with a song. So now let's sing together, Singing a Song by Peter Mayer. It's new to most of us, but it's easy to learn. Brenna will sing the first verse, and then we'll all sing the first verse. Please rise or remain seated as is comfortable for you.
We know this river always keeps flowing. We will be rowing our whole lives long, and we may never know where we're going, but we can go there singing a song. Let's do the first verse together. We know this river always keeps flowing. We'll be rowing our whole lives long. We may never know where we're going, but we can go there singing a song. Just like a mother to a child she's holding, just like a soldier marching along, just like the faithful on Sunday morning, raising our voices, singing a song. Eyes will shine but not as bright, arms will hold but not as tight, when a word is only spoken. So give it feeling, give it rhyme, play it in for quarter time, sing it with a heart wide open, sing of the beauty right there beside you, inside you, making you strong, so that when trouble comes round to grieve you, still will leave you singing a song. Eyes will shine but not as bright, arms will hold but not as tight, when a word is only spoken. So give it feeling, give it rhyme, play it in for quarter time, sing it with a heart wide open, and may the music of life overtake us, touch us, mistake us for a heavenly throne.
seated. People all over the earth have loved the stories of the Lord of the Rings trilogy by J.R.R. Tolkien. It's a tale of how ordinary people, and especially people who are often overlooked as small and powerless, nonetheless can make a difference in the world. No matter the difficulty, no matter the uncertainty, there is good in the world, and we are right to carry on. Mark Petrikin joins us as Samwise in today's story, and Rob will take the role of Frodo, just as the two hobbits have their first daunting glimpse of Mordor.
We'll fix that with CGI, no problem. If our budget allows, hint, hint. Mordor, the one place in Middle-earth we don't want to see any closer, and it's the one place we're trying to get to. It's just where we can't get. Let's face it, Mr. Frodo, we're lost. I don't think Gandalf meant for us to come this way.
He didn't mean for a lot of things to happen, Sam, but they did.
I wonder if we'll ever be put into songs or tales.
What?
Well, I wonder if people will ever say, let's hear about Frodo and the ring, and they'll say, yes, that's one of my favorite stories. Frodo was courageous, wasn't he, Dad? Yes, my boy, he was the most famousest of all hobbits, and that's saying a lot.
You left out one of the chief characters, Samwise. Samwise the brave. I want to hear more about Sam. Frodo wouldn't have gotten so far without Sam.
Well, now, Mr. Frodo, you shouldn't make fun. I was being serious.
So was I.
Samwise the Brave? Mr. Frodo, what's wrong?
I can't do this, Sam.
I know, it's all wrong. By rights, we shouldn't even be here, but we are. It's like in the great stories, Mr. Frodo, the ones that really mattered, full of darkness and danger they were, and sometimes you didn't want to know the end, because how could the end be happy? How could the world go back to the way it was when so much bad had happened? But in the end, it's only a passing thing, this shadow. Even darkness must pass. A new day will come, and when the sun shines, it will shine out the clearer. Those were the stories that stayed with you. They meant something, even if you were too small to understand why. But I think, Mr. Frodo, I do understand. I know now. Folks in those stories had lots of chances of turning back, but they didn't. They kept going, because they were holding on to something.
What were they holding on to, Sam?
That there's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo, and it's worth fighting for.
Paul.
Each Sunday, we receive an offering to support the mission of this congregation. Here we care for one another, and we extend our love and care into the wider community through actions for justice and equity. Here we create a loving religious community that supports learning and spiritual growth. Your contributions, which we saw actually earlier in a different way, your contributions allow this congregation to reach out to all who seek a transformative and life-affirming message of love and hope. If you're online, click the link in the Zoom chat to make a contribution. If you're on site, you may place a donation in the basket or use your device to find the link on uufhc.net or on the Fellowship app. Whatever method of giving you choose, your generosity helps us to grow a healthier, more joyful UU community, and in keeping with our religious heritage, to draw the circle of love and justice a little bit wider.
In this worship service that invites us to lean ever more deeply into our mission as Unitarian Universalists, we renew our commitment as a community to respond out of deep care for one another. So now is the time to share briefly a joy, a sorrow, a gratitude, something you carry deeply within your heart this morning. If you're on site in the sanctuary, please come forward to the front and speak into the microphone while Paul lights a candle for you. If you're on Zoom, put it in the chat. Put the message you'd like to share in the chat, and Brenna will read it as Paul lights a candle. A few gentle reminders. This isn't a time for announcements or politics. Please say your first name, and please share from your heart and from your own experience. Be mindful not to share anyone else's experience unless you have their express permission to do so. Would anyone like to share?
When I was a boy each week, Sunday we would go to church, pay attention to the priest. He would read the holy word, consecrate the holy bread. Everyone would kneel and bow. Today the only difference is everything is holy now. Everything, everything, everything is holy now. When I was in Sunday school, we would learn about the time Moses split the sea in two, Jesus made the water wine. And I remember feeling sad. Miracles don't happen still, but now I can't keep track, 'cause everything's a miracle. Everything, everything, everything's a miracle. Wine from water is not so small, even better magic trick. Anything is here at all. So the challenging thing becomes not to look for miracles, but finding where there isn't one. When holy water was rare at best, barely wet my fingertips, but now I have to hold my breath. I'm swimming in a sea of air. It used to be a world half there, heaven second rate, hand me down, but I walk it with the reverent air, 'cause everything is holy now. Everything, everything, everything is holy now. Child's face, say it's not a testament, that'd be very hard to say. See another dew morning come, say it's not a sacrament, I tell you that it can't be done. This morning outside I stood, saw a little red-winged bird shining like a burning bush, singing like a scripture verse. Made me want to bow my head. I remember when church went out, how things have changed since then. Everything is holy now. Used to be a world half there, heaven second rate, hand me down, but I walk it with a reverent air, 'cause 'cause everything is holy now. Everything, everything, everything is holy now.
This morning's reading is by Joy Harjo. The title is Once the World Was Perfect. Joy is the 23rd U.S. Poet Laureate and a member of the Muskogee Nation. Once the world was perfect and we were happy in that world, then we took it for granted. Discontent began a small rumble in the earthly mind. Then doubt pushed through with its spiked head, and once doubt ruptured the web, all manner of demon thoughts jumped through. We destroyed the world we had been given for inspiration and for life. Each stone of jealousy, each stone of fear, greed, envy, and hatred put out that light. No one was without a stone in his or her hand, and there we were, right back where we had started. We were bumping into each other in the dark. And now we had no place to live, since we didn't know how to live with one another. Then one of the stumbling ones took pity on another and shared a blanket. A spark of kindness made a light. The light made an opening in the darkness. Everyone worked together to make a ladder. A Wind Clan person climbed out first into the next world, and then the other clans, the children of those clans, their children, and their children all the way through time to now into the morning light, to you.
The quantum physicist Carlo Rovelli urges human beings to seek out the meaning of life and the reality of our reality, even if it's much different than what we might at first think. This approach reminds me of our Unitarian Universalist principle to affirm a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. So, Rob and I read this book by George Musser, putting ourselves back in the equation why physicists are studying consciousness and artificial intelligence to unravel the mysteries of the universe. Yes, it's a very long title. What reeled me in was the twinning of human consciousness with the mysteries of the universe. I was surprised to discover that physicists, neuroscientists, psychologists, and scientists studying artificial intelligence all agree that consciousness, human or artificial, is a hard problem and one we don't understand. It turns out that physicists who don't agree on what reality is or why time seems to flow when, according to Albert Einstein and every physicist thereafter, the equations of general relativity say it does not. Rob, you're a physicist. Was there anything in this book that surprised you?
What surprised me most was Roger Penrose's conjecture about free will being based on the incompatibility between quantum nature and the universal gravity being classical. It didn't make sense to me. That speculation is deeply troublesome because just because we don't understand two critical processes, quantum field theory and consciousness, it doesn't mean that those are interrelated. However, we'll be addressing that later on.
Now, I'm willing to accept that much of what I take to be reality is not true at the micro level. I probably grasped that basic concept in elementary school. A table, for example, looks and feels solid, but it's made up of atoms, which are made up of even smaller particles, and so that solid table is mostly empty space. And that's even true of our brains. The organic brain is made of matter, cells that are made of molecules, that are made of atoms, and so on, mostly empty space. Maybe some of us more than others. Rob, I was amazed at the parallels that scientists studying artificial intelligence are finding between the neurons in a human being's organic brain and the nodes in an artificial neural network. They even call it a neural network.
Well, that's right. Much like the human brain, an artificial intelligence neural network works by taking input signals and distributing them to other neurons that are interconnected in multiple ways with other neurons. Each nerve cell in your brain has 100 connections to other brain cells, very much like a neural network. These pulses are passed on to many other sites in a series of levels, with each level getting closer to the output response that makes most sense. The critical element is that the critical element in the network is that each signal handoff to the next element is able to be modified so that the passing on is modified with increased or decreased likelihood, depending on how well the output matches what we see. The amazing thing about neural networks is that nobody can figure out exactly how they work, but they do. Artificial ones work. The new properties of neural networks are being discovered every day.
That's true of human consciousness as well, isn't it?
Yes, one aspect of the problem of human consciousness is that we are part of that reality. We never stand outside of it.
Human beings aren't omniscient observers of their own thought processes. We can't be. But by observing how a computer-based neural network functions, we can start thinking about parallels with the human brain and the whole concept of human consciousness, or artificial consciousness. What about that, Rob? Could AI, a computer-based artificial intelligence, actually become conscious the way that we think of ourselves as being conscious?
AI is currently based on two major elements. First, an accumulation of a very large amount of information. For example, a database of thousands of images of puppies and kittens, and that's a big database. Second element is a method or an algorithm that can be used to extract and correlate that and assemble that information into an optimal fashion. For example, to allow the AI network to catalog the images as either being a puppy or a kitten. We can see the output. AI correctly identifying puppies as puppies and kittens as kittens. It may give the impression of intelligent reasoning. And of course, AI networks are able to do much more than correctly identify puppies and kittens. The AI output provides the illusion of creative reasoning, even though no awareness of active reasoning may have occurred. The designation of meaning, that is reasoning, is something that we infer into the results rather than it actually producing it. AI databases are growing larger and larger with additional information. The algorithms for extracting that information are becoming more intricate and cross-referential. So the illusion of consciousness is getting better and better. The thing that we will have a very difficult time determining is when the process moves from the level of illusion to the level of actual self-awareness within the machine. When that happens, information internal to the machine can then be self-evaluated and compared to self-generated hypothetical situations. In a human being, we call that reasoning. We call it sentience. The possibility of independent machine thought will then be born and give rise to a new type of consciousness, not necessarily the type of consciousness we have. And then consciousness other than ours will become a possibility.
As Descartes said in 1637, I think, therefore I am. Apparently that statement, old as it is likely to be true, which actually is a relief, really. I was very glad to learn that physicists are generally in agreement that we're not imagining all of reality like the characters in the Matrix. One thing really intrigued me: the number of theories offered to explain how neural networks work, and therefore how human consciousness might work, and even how reality itself may work. Integrated information theory, predictive coding, relational theory. To understand any of these, it may be helpful to think for a minute about, for example, how humans learn to see. Rob?
Yeah. In seeing, the human brain generates images of the outside world from electrical pulses that come from our retina. Light falls on the eye, and the lenses inside the eye cause the image to be projected onto each of the retinas, which then fire the pulses from the image by means of neurons, receptors, lights and rods and cones in the eye within the retina. Those pulses are sent to the optic nerve, through the optic nerve, to a center for sight in a very specific part of the brain. Actually, the eye is an extension of the brain itself. And that part of the brain has learned how to interpret those pulses. It is interesting that there are pulses also sent to the other parts of the brain that deal with other issues associated with sight. Defense reaction or fight or flight reaction. For example, if a baseball is coming at you from the side, ready to hit your head, your hand is in motion to block that baseball before you even know or aware that it's coming. Other parts of the brains are working unconsciously. And there are more interesting questions. How does the sight center learn to see shapes and colors, redness? Where does redness form? And do we see the same redness? How are 3D images constructed inside your head from a 2D image. That particular thing seems to give rise to optical illusions that we see. There are many theories, and that's how we come around to the idea that the brain is like an AI neural network, very much so. Like you said, integration information theory and predictive coding and relational theory.
I thought the theory of predictive coding was interesting. It's the idea that most of what our eyes see, the brain ignores because it's what the brain expects. Trees have green leaves. The sky is blue. We don't really have to interpret those images anew each time. But if I walk outside and the sky is purple, the way it looked sometimes in Minnesota when a tornado was nearby, my brain really notices. And that's when the flight part of fight or flight kicks in. Predictive coding is actually used all the time these days in communications. Music, for example, can be compressed for faster downloading by leaving out the bits of information that are always present and transmitting only what's different. It's hard for me to understand how that actually works, but I know it does. So it makes sense to me that our human brains might use at least some predictive coding to let us see in ways that help to keep us alive. I found integrated information theory interesting too, but I don't fully understand George Musser's explanation. So could you explain it for us, Rob?
I'll try. By the way, that's why eyewitness testimony is so bad.
Yeah.
The concept of integrated information theory is that a mathematical model can evaluate and assess the consciousness of a system. An important part of that evaluation is that it is never complete, but can only approach completeness. Just look into Kurt Gödel's theory of incompleteness in a complex system.
That's a different sermon.
That's a different sermon. The process runs something like this. First, we predict what reality might look like. We all do that. Then we test that prediction to see if the reality corresponds to the way we think it should. Then we use the feedback to see how close we are from our senses. We use the feedback to see if we are getting things right. That process improves our grasp of what is real. Babies use this the most often when they're learning about reality. And then we do it again. Our level of consciousness can be measured by how well and how often we change our views of what we believe is real. When's the last time you changed your idea about something that's important? A system can perform a process like this, and a system that can perform a process like this can be assigned a level of consciousness. IIT is very controversial, however, and is criticized for not being unprovable. If a scientist puts forth an idea that is not unprovable, it's usually not considered to be worthy of consideration. However, it opens the door for expanded thought about what we call consciousness.
And you know, Rob, I like that idea about if we're able to change our minds, it's an indication of a higher level of consciousness. In other words, if new information can really make a difference. One of my takeaways is that our minds are always integrating information, storing it in ways that most of the time are helpful, ways that link it to other information that might be related. Of all the theories of how the mind works, though, I admit to being most interested in the relational theories. One of the ways that physicists have looked at the universe is that the building blocks of subatomic particles, the ones I learned about in elementary school, have hardly any actual properties. Those particles are described more by what they do than by what they are. One approach, string theory, says that maybe the fundamental constituents of the universe have no fixed properties at all, that deep down only relationships exist. Things emerge because of relations between the fundamental constituents of the universe. Now, this idea about the universe could also have a parallel in human consciousness, that consciousness is the brain grasping the connections, the relationships between things, which might make sense given that our brains are made up of whatever makes up the universe. Does that sound a bit circular? Maybe a bit crazy? It is. But what seizes my attention is the idea that what is real about the universe and about us is our relationships. Okay, sorry, Rob. Now I've turned the theory of physics into a metaphor because it's a great one. If I take away nothing else from this foray into the mysteries of the universe, it's that those relationships we most cherish may be the most fundamental, most essential, most real of all that we call reality.
Classical physics states that things can exist in isolation. You've heard the story. Take a particle in space away from anything else under no other influence. Einstein introduced the concept that everything exists in relationship to everything else. And he was very good at that. The very nature of being is dependent on that relativity. One thing is clear to me in all of this. People studying what the universe is and the people studying what human consciousness is have very much in common and are sometimes the same people. From the nature of matter itself to the nature of the mind, our understanding is still quite limited. What we are beginning to see is that they are very, very likely connected.
There are multiple challenging aspects of this scientific conversation. One is the idea that the arrow of time might point in both directions, that time could actually flow from the future to the past. This idea, strange as it is, seems to be related to the idea that there's no causation implied in quantum mechanics. Or perhaps to the idea, it's another point of view, that there's not so much causation, that there is so much causation that maybe there's not really free will. So I want to say this about that. I can accept the idea that there is at the quantum level a degree of uncertainty that says anything is possible, although some events are much more probable than others. So, for example, we might see an avalanche, but we're very unlikely to see the snow return to its original spot on the mountain, despite the movie Tenet. There are some events that unfold sequentially. Those events are pretty much irreversible, like the avalanche. And so the chance of the sequence occurring in reverse is so small that as a practical matter, it doesn't happen.
Yes, the word causation needs to be carefully defined. Time seems to move in one direction only, from more ordered to less ordered conditions. The arrow of time is directed by probability, and causation occurs at every event level. But the observation is the result of billions of events, of which we see only the most probable outcome. That's the hitch. If you're on a pool table, you can reverse things pretty easily. But if you're in an avalanche, you can't. This is where free will comes into question. What about free will, Jay?
Free will, okay. Here's a great example from the quantum physicist Carlo Rovelli. He knows that there's a chocolate bar in his cupboard. If he decides to get it out and eat it, is that decision predetermined by all the other irreversible events in his life that led up to that moment? Or is it really an act of free will?
What does Rovelli think?
Rovelli, of course, is uncertain. He's a big fan of embracing the uncertainty of scientific theories. But he does have an idea that I like. He says that there may be free will at the macro level in his decision to eat the chocolate, while at the micro level there are many uncertainties and possibilities and probabilities that would support either a decision to eat the chocolate or a decision to leave it in the cupboard. That makes sense to me. But if I'm being completely honest, if there's a chocolate bar in my cupboard, I'll probably eat it. And there's little uncertainty at either the micro or the macro level.
If we take the ideas that we know there is causation, we know that there is uncertainty, and we know that we are not able to perceive reality with certainty. Those three things we know. Then the best we can do is to keep living and getting closer and closer and closer to what is real. Where does it leave us with human beings trying to decide what to do?
Rob, do you mean, do any of these ideas tell us how to live?
Yes.
What do you think?
The debate on free will has been going on since people have first begun to think. Some things are completely determined by causal relationships, and some are determined by probabilistic determinations. In addition, we have a limited capacity to determine which is which and when each contribution applies most. However, I believe that at critical periods within our lives, not necessarily a whole bunch, but at critical periods within our lives, we have the opportunity to choose what to do, as the consequences of our choices seems to be more believable. This process gives rise to the feeling of free will. Okay, that's what I think. What do you think, Reverend Jay? And since you're the minister, you're going to have the last word.
The last word for this moment, I'm entitled to change my point of view later. What I think is that I'm back to science as metaphor. If we think of the Big Bang as the start of all we know and a lot of what we don't know, it's sort of like a huge stone that drops into the middle of a pond and starts all these ripples moving out. Even if we can predict a lot about those ripples and the patterns they make, how long they will continue, there's lots of room for uncertainty. And there's much more uncertainty in the universe than in the pond metaphor. I like the idea of uncertainty because it means there's maybe a bit more elbow room for free will. Because I believe that what we humans do matters. Whether there's free will or not, we might as well behave as if there is, and as if we can make a difference in the world. To me, that's where Frodo and Sam are important. They're small people in a huge, uncertain world. They have a task that may not even be possible, and if they manage to accomplish it, there's no guarantee that the world will really be better off. But they keep on. They can't know everything, but based on what they know, they do the things that bring them hope. Going back to the Big Bang and the ripples of the expanding universe, in a way, we are the ripples. We humans, with our human consciousness, are exploring the mysteries of the universe. We are the universe trying to understand itself. That's amazing. The mystery and that possibility is exciting and challenging and important. And we have to ask ourselves, what do we bring? What is our hope? Is it love? Is it kindness? If nothing else, perhaps we can learn to bring a little kindness into being. Kindness might be enough. Maybe that is the light we carry. And now let's rise or remain seated if that's more comfortable as we sing together hymn number 1064, Blue Boat Home.
Though below me I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean, still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known, the wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sun my sail and moon my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens in our beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great winds urging me on, greet the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor or port have I known, the wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat
Someday. Now, these words of benediction are by Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. Someday, after mastering the winds, the waves, the tides, and gravity, we shall harness the energies of love. And then, for the second time in the history of the world, humans will discover fire. And now we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These are in our hearts, the light we carry out into all the world.
standing on the planet, breathing in the sound. I'm being bombarded by electromagnetic beams, flying through my body, shining red and blue and green. 100 million signals are racing through my brain. Guess it must be just another ordinary day. Ooh. I live in 11 dimensions, 7 more than I can see, where matter equals light and I am made of energy. It's all expanding from one microscopic grain. I guess it must be just another ordinary day. An ordinary day for me and Captain Kirk. Every fact is so absurd in this science fiction world. An ordinary day in the merry land of Oz, the psychedelic mind of God, the phantasmic universe. There's a giant black hole in the center of the galaxy. There's a blueprint of my bones in every single cell of me. And everything with weight is warping time and space. Guess it must be just another ordinary day. Hey, ordinary day for Mad Hatters having tea, Oompa Loompas making sweets in this Willy Wonka-reality. An ordinary day for alarm clocks that beat and shake me from my sleep so I can wake up in this dream. Just an ordinary day. An ordinary day. An ordinary day.
Thank you so much, Bretta. So, everyone, time for coffee. I'm sure you need it after all that science.